taste death, or however you say it, until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. He translated that coming in his kingdom to going up to his kingdom. And that's why he was arguing that that meant it was referring to the ascension after the resurrection.
Now, you've got plenty of lexicons and exegetical tools there. I don't think you would ever... Have you ever run into that at all? I don't think so.
That particular translation?
Yeah, or even if you looked in the lexicon, the sense of any of those words, and I don't think so.
No, the second one, coming, going. I mean, well, for example, that's erchomai again. So, I mean, there's go up. But that's a different word. So that's the root, but then there's a bunch of different forms of it. And there are ones where it says like go away or depart or approach, or there's a bunch of them, but no translations render it as going up to his kingdom.
Yeah, and I've got like translations that nobody else does because I've done them myself, and I think 50 English translations, not a single one of them ever says that.
Yeah. So I think it was just an opportunistic. He was just looking at all the possible English glosses for that root and picked the one that basically was convenient for his case. That's not how you translate.
You can easily give him a few examples of the word mellow to show that it's impossible to translate it that way as a delay. For example, the first one that I picked up in Matthew 2:13, when it speaks about Joseph being warned in a dream to flee to Egypt because Herod is about to seek the child to destroy him. That's mellow. There's no delay there. He has to leave right now because he's about to do it. Anyway, it's an impossible in translation.
Yeah, the word guide I was using said that it is translated to delay in a couple places, but it's really dependent on the context of the rest of the verse. And in the case of verse 24, I'm sorry, verse 16. Sorry, chapter 16, verse 27. It doesn't seem like the context would give it that sense. It seems like in almost all the other cases, it's just meaning it's going to come.
Well, like Frank says in the chat there, what he's getting at, what Robert Funk is getting at, is just what you were saying, Doug. It's like context matters. You can't just rely on lexicons or anything, you know, what's the term, cognate languages and all that stuff. You know, it just, you have to take it kind of the bigger picture.
Yeah,
I think that's one of the huge things that always bothered me about biblical scholarship, and even still, like, kind of being a secularist and trying to read, I need to know where these guys come from, what schools they come from, and, you know, what denominations they belong to. Like, it might sound really crazy, but all of that, like, comes into play on how they portray, or how they want to portray, the literature or the word usage or the interpretation or whatever you're doing. Like we were talking earlier about signing agreements with the colleges. Like, that's why I have a hard time sometimes understanding like just how things are interpreted by some of these people, because they, you know, if they're professors, they need to toe the line of the particular theology that they're in, or they will no longer be a part of that. And to some, like we were talking about how could they, you know, most of them act like agnostic, but that's tons of money out there in books and publications. They can't stop. It supports the college, and it, I'm not saying the whole thing's about money, but it tows the whole machine. And Bart Ehrman put it in a good way one time in a debate. He said an apologist is nothing more than an evangelist disguised as a historian. And I loved it, and I use it as much as I can, because stuff like that, like, even though it's intellectually dishonest, when an apologist like Mr. Schlick comes on, like that one time we were in a chat, I will use it to the best of my ability if I know they are, even though I'm being intellectually dishonest.
I like what Dr. Price said, that first comes the theology, the standpoint of the scholar, and then the scholarship is kind of like beaten into shape, so that the Bible has to say what you believe it must say in order for your particular viewpoint to be correct. So in like the example that Doug gives, this guy has to have the Bible say something that it clearly doesn't in order to justify his beliefs about the delay of the parousia, or parousia, I should say.
Yeah, and even secular texts do that too. Just in the last episode, Dr. Price talked about the the Queen Jane Bible. I want to buy that. It sounded awesome. Well, here you go. Have political movements beating the scholarship into shape, like John was just saying, and also the Skeptics Annotated Bible. So here we have secularists doing the same exact thing that they accuse the religious community of doing, just on the other side. It's amazing.
Yeah, I've looked at that. The Skeptics Annotated Bible. You're right. They're just apologists for the opposite team.
Yeah, I can't stand that.
They point out a few good things, but some of the stuff they say that are contradictions, it's like,
Nitpicky.
are you actually reading the Bible or what? I mean,
well, they definitely don't know anything about higher criticism, because, like
No.
Dr. Price always points out, a lot of contradictions evaporate when you really understand the text scientifically and critically. They point out a lot of stuff that is contradictory if you don't know anything about the Bible.
right. Yep. Yeah, it's infuriating too because they make critical people look like they're in the same business, like Wayman said, just on the opposite side. So people can just maybe come to the conclusion, well, they can just dismiss us because obviously, the people that run the Skeptics Annotated Bible, they're just, well, in that particular case, it's true, but critical people in general, because of this, having seen this website, well, they're just, not reading the Bible properly, which is true in that case.
Well, we're all on the devil's team one way or the other, right?
Yeah.
We're wearing his jersey. Because I did look at one link today about that guy that said that Jesus was crucified and there was an earthquake and his blood seeped down underground and fell onto the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant, which was buried underneath the site where Jesus was crucified. And this dude found it and had the blood tested by some Israeli lab. And it's going on, and it's, But yeah, it's like, if you're not 100% for me and my particular theology, then you're all just deceived by the devil. Everything.
That was Ron Wyatt.
Right. Yeah. But that was a trip to watch that. That was something else.
Yep. How'd we get on this topic, by the way? I forgot.
I preached a huge sermon on Bible criticism.
But one good thing about
one.
what Doug was showing with Logos Bible Software is that, he paid good money for that collection of stuff. He's got all kinds of different lexicons by different people from different faith-based and some not. He's got all that access to commentaries. He's got original Greek. He can make his own determinations. He can look at it in context, everywhere it occurs in the Bible and all that stuff. So these are very useful tools for exegesis or other types of study, whatever your particular bent might be. So it's not like you're just sitting around with a Strong's Concordance looking around for, stuff to just bolster your particular viewpoint. And it gives you a lot of very sophisticated scholarly tools for you to do your own research, and that's why I use it.
Yeah, and two, like, I don't have the logos, but I have tons of books, and even when I go to Goodwill, Like I went down to the library, the public library. They have a bookshop, and they had a Wycliffe commentary Bible. It was an old one, but I collect those things because inside those commentaries, like John was just saying, are important notes about how those denominations and at that time period they thought and read the text, and a lot of them still do today. So I have probably 3 shelves of just books from different viewpoints that I can just grab, and like Schofield Bible references, huge, on apocalypticism and Cold War era kind of stuff. And it's awesome just to grab it and see what they thought, and like John's saying with logos, you can do that, but everybody should have that kind of stuff. It takes up a lot of room, but whenever somebody brings up something about it, you can be like, oh, okay, this is from this is where they got it from, and it's amazing because it's all right there.
And I spent a lot of money on that software because I want all that stuff, the Dead Sea Scrolls, sectarian documents, the biblical manuscripts, the papyri, everyday papyri from Egypt, the people's garbage can stuff, because all that stuff may or may not be relevant in some cases, like for language, things like that. If you're looking at Koine Greek, you might want to look at everyday uses as opposed to biblical uses. But I want it all integrated into one system where it's all available all the time.
Yeah, that's what I really love about it. And for 4 easy payments of, just kidding.
Yeah, don't even name that, people. Just forget it. And
Yeah,
you can create your own stuff too,
Yeah, that's awesome.
In Logos version 3, when I first started it, it was you had to buy a license to create your own resources for a year. Every year you had to renew it, and it only worked with HTML files. So you were able to create only one type of resource, a monograph. You couldn't create Bibles, lexicons, commentaries, all kinds. You couldn't create any other resource. So it was really a major task to do your own resource there. But then starting with Logos 4, they introduced the personal book builder integrated into the thing, and it was for free. And it's okay. Now I took off, and I got 50 things I've done since 2 years.
You guys, I apologize. I'm going to have to take off and go to work. Have a great discussion.
Okay,
See you later,
thanks, Dale,
Dale.
for dropping in.
Did things
Appreciate it.
improve at all on my microphone?
Yeah, it seems to have cured it.
Oh, good. I hope so. All right, then. Take care, then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, I agree with you, Frank. Like I've watched a bunch of Ehrman debates and in his books. I think he goes a little too far when it comes to. It seems like he's trying to press the differences between manuscripts thing a little too far. Like it seems like he's trying to give the impression that it undermines everything. Like there's just no trustworthiness whatsoever to the manuscript tradition because there's so many discrepancies between manuscripts. But still, for the most part, yeah, there are a few important differences. Like he's mentioned a few of them, but yeah, still there seems to be pretty solid consistency also.
Yeah, I think mainly he does that because he has a bone to pick, and I think it's out of retaliation to years and years of being it pounded into his head as an evangelical that everything was straight up God breathed, inspired, and there's no contradictions. So I think he's kind of pushing it to that crowd, and I think he turns it up to like a 10 when he could be talking about it as a 4, but sometimes people only hear it at a 10. So there's a lot of added drama, and definitely he's way overblown, and sometimes he reaches conclusions in his books that I have no idea why he does what he does. But then there's a huge audience who needs to keep reading him, because I think all of his books are geared towards evangelical believers who dislike him but still read his material. And he's trying to reach that crowd, I believe.
Yeah, what's that wise saying? Something like if you have a bent rod, you have to bend it too far back in the opposite direction in order to get it straight again. So yeah, maybe he's bent too far back in the other direction.
It kind of depends on what he's dealing with when he's on his particular specialty on his home turf. I mean, he's great. But some things, and you can't suggest this to people like Ehrman that they always have one eye on their employment. I mean, are
Yeah.
you going to be able to teach at Chapel Hill if you're like a out of the closet atheist? But if you suggest that kind of stuff, that's taken to be so insulting as to not even be worth commenting on or to get a good tongue lashing. I think he's done that too. I think.
Well, look what happened. I mean, it's a totally different academic environment, if you could call it that. But look what happened to I'm gonna forget the darn guy's name. Richard Carrier debated him. Dr. Price has talked about him a few times. A young apologist scholar, younger guy. I forget his name, but anyway, he said something about
Yeah, Mike Lacona. That sounds.
yeah, like Kona. I guess he doubted. What was it? He doubted whether or not the graves opening up was literally true in Matthew after the earthquake, and his boss or whoever it was, yeah, got so pissed they fired him.
Yep, that's how it works. That's exactly what I mean by towing the theological line and the danger they run into. Like back to speaking about what John was saying about Bart Ehrman being on his home turf. Um, his book Did Jesus Exist was horrible. Like Bart Ehrman has a hard time with that kind of stuff, and he shouldn't have wrote that book because it was not something that he was used to writing, and he took a beating for that. Like I was reading that book and I was just shaking my head like no 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 no. So it was funny, and then everybody came out beating him. But then he's written some excellent introduction books to early Christianity and like translated some a lot of texts into English that updated kind of stuff, and I really enjoy those kinds of things. But when he's out of his league on some of this stuff, I just end up being like, Bart, just like stop while you're ahead.
I
Yep.
think a lot of his fans even were disappointed in that book. I'm still debating whether or not I want to read it. You didn't care for it, huh?
It wasn't bad. I'm a huge fan of his, and I like to hear what he has to say at least, even if I disagree with it. So I kind of wanted it on my shelf, even if it was a big Bart Ehrman mistake on my shelf. That's fine. That's saying he's human. He still has some fundamentalist tendencies hung over from evangelicalism and certain things that would sometimes make him side with the evangelical community that you just had no idea why he's siding that way with. I don't know. I don't know if he needs to keep his job down there. I don't think so. I mean, but he seems to hang on to some of that stuff. I don't.
Hmm.
I have no idea why.
No,
Yeah,
I've
I
read
don't think.
most of what he had written. I think I have most of it, but and I've liked just about everything. There's some things I didn't. I don't think I read God's Problem, but Did Jesus Exist was just so bad and fundamentally flawed in its arguments that it just stands out as being, untypical.
Yeah, I put that on the top shelf, and I could still smell it. But but his book on how Jesus became God, I'm halfway through that right now, and that's been really good. I actually learned quite a bit, and I'm really enjoying that one.
That's good to hear.
And I think Did Jesus Exist started off as like the rough draft of that book, but then he turned it into something else. And that's one of the problems with it, I think, is because it lost its original focus. It wasn't what he intended originally to do.
Why does that Hebrew look so weird?
Because it's Syriac.
Uh,
Yeah, this is a user-created module I did of So this is like Genesis 1. But yeah, it's like you couldn't do this before, but now it's, well, easy is a relative term, I guess. I've just been doing this so I'm getting so good at it. But yeah, this is from the website, the Comprehensive Aramaic Lexicon, their version of the Peshitta Tanakh, but I'm like modifying it to work better with Logos. So, but you can't do everything. You know, they reserve certain things for their own internal use, like creating lemmas that you can do, and then you could tag it for morphological searching. You can't do the lemma. You can put in the tags, but it won't come up for that lemma. So it'll search 20,000 instances of verbs in the entire Old Testament. You know, when if you were able to like specify a lemma, you would just search for that word with that particular morphology. So and I've tried it 9 ways from Sunday and tried to reverse engineer this and hack this, and I just can't get it. So it's just not possible. But you can fake it in some ways, but it's just too much work.
Yeah. Huh.
Just doing this, each one, the reason it's 2 different colors, there's blue and then there's black text, is the blue has been hyperlinked to the lexicon entries on the website. So if you click one, it'll take you over to the Comprehensive Aramaic Lexicon Project website for that particular word. So yeah, I've gotten real far. I'm trying to find a way to automate the process, you know. So just doing
Yeah,
it
that
right
would
now.
save you like a million years.
Yeah, well, I need to know like some internal ways that the website functions. So I would, because I'm looking at it, and the hyperlinks are this. It's like it's got each individual word has a unique number identifier. So if you click on it, it sends a hyperlink probably to a server somewhere, and it determines programmatically which information. It's you can tell this website's kind of old, so it's using some technology based on PHP, but it reminds me of active server pages, where it just pulls information from a database and builds the page that's returned to the user dynamically based on some criteria that's sent, usually in the hyperlink itself. And that's what it appears to be doing. I hope they don't have a different web page for every single word. That would be just think if you had to make some corrections, like they discovered some new manuscripts and you wanted to update the lexicon to include like 4 more variants of one word. Oh my God, that would be horrific. So based on that, I'm thinking, okay, well, if every word has its own unique identifier on a website, what I really just need to do is figure out a way to programmatically just link up those web pages directly with those numbered codes, and then just have it go run through the entire text and just put them in. So I've done that for other stuff too, so it shouldn't be too difficult.
You have so many of these types of projects, John. I don't know where you get the time.
Let's say I think I have. Let me look at my list. I think I have 29 projects all running concurrently.
Yikes.
And I didn't add in the scanning of Couchaud's books yet. Okay, 29, yeah. And I just get bored and I just keep going through them and say, okay, what do I want to work on instead for a while? And, oh, that might be interesting, or oh, that's too much. Because a lot of stuff, if you're away from it too long, it takes too long to kind of remember where you left off and get back into it. So a lot of stuff I just put off until I'm really in the mood to do it again.
Yeah. Is Couchaud the scholar that argued that Marcion was that Marcion's collection of Paul's epistles his version were original, and that the church expanded on him? Is that the same guy? Rather than the other way around, which is what the church fathers said, that Marcion edited the originals. I think it's the same guy.
I believe. Yeah, I might get kicked out of Hangout now by clicking on that link.
Uh-oh, what'd you click on? Sounds like he's having technical difficulties.
Yeah, the Hangout keeps freezing up for me.
Can you hear us okay?
Yeah. Freeze up for a while. It's getting there. Yeah, probably be okay now. I just gotta stay away from Neil Godfrey's site.
Yeah, you were freezing there a little bit.
I don't know what it is. I think all these like ad blockers and stuff that I run all the time, I think that there's some kind of links whenever you go to Neil's site that just hangs up that software.
Yeah, could be.
So am I still kind of like jittery?
No, it seems to be okay now.
Yeah, and so I'm looking at the site and I go, wouldn't it be nice if instead of being on a website, it was in a Logos resource? So I started to put it together to see what it would look like. But they're really not interested in that. They've already contacted some software companies like BibleWorks, and they really screwed up the stuff they sent them. You know, nobody was happy with it, and a lot of the Syriac stuff in these software packages ultimately came from them anyway. So it wasn't news to them for me to try to like campaign to get them to do the lexicon for Logos, but they're Bible oriented. You know, it's a Bible software program, and the Comprehensive Aramaic Lexicon Project is not a biblical site. I mean, they're dealing with everything Syrian and Aramaic, ostraca, seals, you know, totally secular stuff that has nothing to do with religion at all. But when you approach a software company and say, I want to do something like this, they have a biblical orientation, and they're going to cause problems because it's not always, you know, when they're doing these resources, they're bringing too much to it, a bias to it, a programming bias, a development bias to it. So,
Yeah.
but for me, you know, I'm looking at, well, what it would look like if, say, like I was using it as a standard, say, like the Little and Scott Greek lexicon or the BDAG or something like that. You know, how would it look? Regardless of, you know, whether this stuff, because a lot of the references and what you're seeing on screen, if you're looking, is the stuff that is non-biblical or maybe only peripherally so.
Is there a way to manually integrate extra biblical stuff to pop up automatically when in the same way that the biblical verses do if they're referenced in some text? Uh-oh, he must have clicked on that link again.
No, I just had the mute on, I forgot.
Oh, okay.
Some of this stuff doesn't link to anything because I would have to manually code it. But if I had this digitized, whatever this ish as is, 49 and 8 in parentheses, whatever that is, if I had that resource somewhere, I could just put a tag in there for it to automatically go there or display in a pop-up that particular reference. So it depends on what you have and what you don't have. For instance, the biblical references are done automatically. I mean, because I have the King James Apocrypha as well as the regular text. If I hover over, you know, the Wisdom of Solomon, it's going to show me exactly that verse because I have that resource, but these other ones are not. This should be a Bible reference, but it doesn't know the difference between Ezra and Ezekiel, so you actually have to have 3 letters minimum. So I would have to go in there and manually change that to easy R.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, there's a lot of problems that come up when you're doing this kind of stuff. You just don't notice until you build it. But just some things are just, and then it's going to go to your default. Now this is a reference to P Ezra 8 2.5, which means the Syriac Peshitta. And it's just showing it in your default Bible, which is the King James that I have here set up for another project. So if I wanted that to specifically point to the Peshitta version, I would have to manually code that in the source document to point to that resource, so, rather than just any old Ezra 8:25. But I thought it looks good. Potentially, if they actually did want to do it in Logos, it would look good. Especially if they had a team of guys working on it that knew what they were doing.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't do this by myself. I mean, this took like a half a day just to do 3 entries, because I don't have anything in Logos that will tell me, what the lemma are. I have the Cedra 3 lexicon based on the New Testament Peshitta, but it doesn't always have everything for the Old Testament. So, it takes me a while to even find out what freaking lemma is being referenced. So, and then I asked him a few questions about how to read information in the website, which he sent me a reply today. So I cleared up a lot of stuff, but still, it's too big of a job for just me. I just wanted to see how it looked, but I'm not going to go any further than this.
You need several lifetimes.
I need a team of grad students.
I just wanted to, just for a second, go back to that Matthew passage. I'm doing a quick screen share. I'll make the text bigger too. But I wanted to look in the handbook we were talking about, and sure enough, right here, is to come, so melo, translates the Greek text literally. Although this form of the verb may signify no more than the simple future, the context does intimate that the event is conceived of as about to take place in the immediate future, within the lifetime of the people to whom Jesus is speaking. The same Greek verb formation is used in 17:12:22, where the immediate future is definitely in view. Some translations have "will come soon." So anyway, yeah, even this, which I don't know what the, I don't know if this is considered a critical resource or not, but it seems not to be. So,
as far as it's textually speaking, it's the consensus view. I mean, that has been the consensus view. It's what your friend is doing is some kind of off-centered fundamentalist viewpoint.
Yeah, I was just curious what the handbook said. Great resource though. Goes through each phrase and gives you like a little explanation of the alternate translations, why it's translated that way, context, etc.
Yeah, you should also scroll, along with some English translations that use the UBS text specifically and see how they match up to the standards of the United Bible Study itself as regards. Well, they do actually reference some of the ones that use them, like today's English version, which is another name for the Good News Bible, and the Revised Standard Version, the New American Bible.
Yeah. I don't know if I have that version. Anyway, I don't want to turn this into a logos sharing hangout.
And
why not?
To change the subject, but I was in Walmart the other day, and I seen the Action Bible, and I loved the graphic.
Superman.
I didn't really care for the evangelical slant through the whole thing, but I got looking at it, and it's all like graphics and everything. It's all like cartoon kind of. They're coming out with the Action Study Bible for English Standard Version February 1st, and I'm probably going to get it, even though it's heavily evangelical. Like I think Focus on the Family sells it. They can't stop with this stuff. They got like study guides and all kinds of stuff with it. But I just thought like the idea of it is a really good idea. And I hope that one day it can be done correctly, like maybe somebody out of Judaism would do illustrations on the Hebrew literature in that format. It'd just be awesome. But for anybody who's into like any kind of like you know, comic book kind of stuff, I loved it. It was awesome. The drawings were awesome.
Yeah, doesn't the Action Bible, it's online, isn't it, for free?
I don't know. I just seen it and it's probably been up for a while what I'm looking at here, but I just seen it in print at Walmart when I was just scrolling through. I was like, oh, cool.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're actually coming out with the ESV. It says here it's going to be $25 for a hardcover. It ain't bad. I'll probably get it, you know?
Yeah, the ESV is not so bad. I was when my kids were in like third grade, I was helping out at school for something, some kind of parent thing, and this woman I met there, I was talking to her. Her daughter worked for Tyndale House, and specifically on the New Living Translation. And she asked me a question. She said, "Do you think that they should change the gender references to, the more generic? So when it says he, they would change it to they, and people of God and say men of God or some, things like that." And I was careful on what I was saying because my basic idea is that, all these efforts are trying to make the Bible relevant when it may not particularly be relevant. So they're constantly making updates in order for it to appeal to the most broadest segment of the population. But specifically, I said, well, as far as gender goes, I don't believe you should change that kind of stuff. I mean, if the Bible says men, he, things like that, I think it should remain that way, but I didn't really go into why I thought that should be the case. But that was my opinion.
Well, if you're going to turn anything in the Bible into gender-neutral stuff, at that point you're just going into feminist theory of the Bible, in which case, fuck that.
The pronouns are inclusive oftentimes, aren't they? I mean, automatically.
Not always. No, actually, the majority of the time they're not.
Oh, I thought that, like the word for brothers or whatever, I forget what it is, but I thought it could include women.
Well, that would be. I think some Greek scholars would say yes, and some would say no. I mean, clearly the word is brothers. It doesn't say brothers and sisters, which a lot of translations do put in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not really too worried about it. Like, simply, if ministers need to use that kind of deal, kind of thing, translation in their congregations, like, I guess scholars have their own Bibles, and congregates and lay people have their own, and you know what I mean? Like, there's plenty out there that it's not really, I don't think, damaging to include everybody. It depends on what the goal of reading it is, I guess.
Well, when I was growing up, and you would get, say, like readings in church that said men and brothers. I don't think there was a single woman in the audience who was thinking that it wasn't referring to them in some way. I mean, a lot of it is just being politically correct for the sake of being politically correct.
Yeah, that's the problem I tend to have with politically correct translations of a given text is that unless, of course, the text is actually talking in that manner or is actually referring to that in that manner in a very gender-neutral sense or in a very politically correct sense for that time, then it should be translated for that. But if it's not, then don't translate it for that, because at that point you're just fucking with the text just to fuck with the text.
Yeah, and it also goes beyond that. There are some really radical revisions, like, an Old Testament story might say, and then smash the babies' heads against the wall and then write bad words with their guts and stuff. But then you might get a translation that just says, and go into the town and, mess them up. You know, you lose the whole, you know, the ferocity of what's going on, and I think, you know, that should be not hidden but made plain.
Yeah, everybody has a reason, for sure.
I have to use the bathroom. I'll be back.
And some reasons are more worse than others.
Right.
Well, anyone got any other topics?
I've got nothing really.
Yeah, DAR had an excellent article out last month on the two sections of Philistines, like northern and southern Philistines, or Sea Peoples, and the difference in pottery and archaeology. It was an excellent read. Because before like it used to be hard to find stuff because they used to say, well, you know, there hardly isn't anything on it. But now, like, with advancements made in archaeology and, you know, finding sites and everything, they can actually come up with a difference between northern and southern.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Has there been any like recent changes on the dating of when they kind of had their heyday?
I'm in it right now. I'll see if I can find something on it. Well, here they're talking about a bench-like installation of a row of depressions was discovered, with women grinding and making dough and bread, which dates from the 6th century BCE. Let's see if I can get a picture of it here.
Oh wow, look at that. Huh. So that's 6th century?
Yeah.
Wow.
They talked about some weapons, but mainly they were saying they had a map here somewhere. How it all looked. Yeah, the article's called "The Other Philistines."
So they're like distinctive. How are they telling them apart? Is it just merely
Yeah,
the geographical location of the
in the
sites?
archaeology. Um, I'm sorry. It's in the pottery and in the weapons, like the imagery on the shards and the weapons and the subject matter of everyday living kind of stuff. Like even the like the designs are different.
Huh. Wow.
So here are the map of the Philistine sites. It's kind of crappy, I know, but
Actually, I can see it pretty well.
there's a whole bunch of them, which is kind of surprising. Like, um,
They're all up and down Israel.
they used to say, there wasn't much about it, but it says Philistines were only one of several tribes known as the Sea Peoples. However, who invaded the land of Israel during the 12th century BCE? It has recently become clear that the Sea Peoples conquered not only parts of the land of Israel, but virtually the entire Mediterranean coastal region.
Just hold on.
The Philistines lived in the land of Israel for more than 600 years, but as I noted, the Philistines were just one of the Sea Peoples. The larger category of Sea Peoples is not known to us as such from the Bible. Yeah, here's an awesome ceramic pot.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah, the design work on that's pretty amazing.
Looks like a water jug or wine jug or something.
Yeah, Sea Peoples generally from other sources, especially archaeology, may refer to northern Sea Peoples to distinguish them from the Philistines in the south. From other ancient sources, we even know some of the names of other Sea Peoples. And believe it or not, at the Temple of Habu, when I went there, I got to see this imagery of the war with the Philistines on the Temple of Habu. I believe it was a temple of Ramses. And at some point, I'm going to dig out those images. But these are ships, and here's a color. The Egyptians fighting the Sea Peoples.
Wow.
Now see, a lot of times they would put this imagery pretty deep into the walls because if this was destroyed, whatever it was used for would still have the imagery on it. And what was sad was a lot of the pillars were used for sugarcane grinding in the sugarcane mills. So you only have like half of the columns left in a lot of these temples. It's pretty sad that they were destroyed like that, but even worse now, since the revolution. I'm glad I went when I did.
Are they like destroying ancient sites?
They robbed Cairo Museum. A
Oh,
lot of stuff went missing.
that's a bummer.
Yeah, I got a really cool map. You should take a look at this.
Awesome.
It's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
What book is that out of?
That was from Franklin Lures Through Atheist Eyes. That was chapter 2 where Jesus never walked.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
I was reading the Syriac language and it's talking about certain dialects. And it said this area that is big, no bigger than Massachusetts, right? The people living on the west side speak a dialect that as you progressively go further east, it changes to by the time you get to the other end of Massachusetts, they're mutually unintelligible. So it's like everybody in Massachusetts speaks English, but the people on the West Coast can't understand, the West Side, can't understand people living on the Atlantic coast. Wouldn't that be weird?
Hmm.
The relevance of that is because that section is like no bigger than what Rhode Island, I think, in area. That Holy Land.
Yeah, pretty small, yeah.
You know, there was something else that I went, oh yeah, the discussion in the Bible Geek listeners about the Hyksos
Mm-hmm.
and the Exodus and related topics. Anybody have anything about that they would like to discuss?
Well, I have a hard time believing that it was totally the Hyksos. Simply because, like we're talking about scholarship, the one way that I came on that theory for the first time was when I went to Egypt for the Africana Studies program. That whole program was very Afrocentric. So Moses, was black, and a lot of like every contribution that you can think of in today's society came from Egypt when I was taking that course, and there was a lot of things like so I kind of from that it kind of like whitewashed everything out for me in order for me to like take on to that in a proper way because when I got back I realized, oh man, this whole thing was very Afrocentric, and maybe I'm being Eurocentric looking at it, but there was so much stuff going on that, you know, granted that's a possibility, but also I guess like when I see the statue of Akhenaten, how he made a monotheistic society, and there's a whole like theory about him being the actual Moses. Like I never went that far, but there's a lot of possibilities in there for it, and I think that because there was a political revolution that may have been a little bit Hebrew or from the region doesn't necessarily mean that you know everything that came to be, so I don't know. It's really tough for me.
In the Bible and Earth that we were reading, I must have skimmed that section or something because it was kind of surprising that they even brought it up as being relevant because the consensus has been for a long time that there's no relation between the Hyksos and the Palestinian Hebrews, that eventually inhabited, even if they were from the same area, there was very little connection. So I was surprised to even see Finkelstein and Silberman mentioning it as being relevant, because I'm thinking, okay, so what archaeological evidence is there of any relationship?
Right.
Maybe you can get it from the Bible, maybe you can get it from related authors like Manetho and Berossus, but where's the archaeology for that? I'm going to have to reread that section because that really surprised me that they even made that, because it's so against the consensus, and I think in this case the consensus is right.
The only thing I remember that they mentioned in the book that wasn't from Manetho or the Bible was that the names seemed etymologically Canaanite.
Okay, yeah, all right, yeah, I remember that. Which could have a different explanation, I think. I don't think it necessarily means that what they're
Well, the other
trying to say it means.
yeah, it's not a nail in the coffin, so to speak. But the other question would be, where did they come from if they weren't Canaanites?
Well,
I mean, that is geographically a very likely source for the
but
Hyksos
the
people.
way I understood it was that, I don't know how outdated this is, but they were Semitic peoples. They came from the east of Egypt, so it doesn't necessarily mean Canaan. It could have been Arabia or across the Levant from, who knows where,
That's true.
further east. So, but I am intrigued by the Canaanite naming. I'm going to have to look into that some more.
Yeah, I think too. Like, there's even theories, and I think that's how the Israeli Tribal League was formed, from all these different Semitic groups, deciding, hey, it would be politically good for us to all agree and to form some kind of tribal league to, like, collaborate. If it's not only politically in arms and war, all kinds of stuff. So I think, like, looking at it that way, it could be just like any culture that has a large influx of immigrants. They were probably worried about it, and all of a sudden they ended up being the majority, and they got political offices and just totally took over. And then all of a sudden, there was a huge backlash to it, and then they sent them packing.
This part's important. I'm looking in the book, and it mentioned I'd forgotten about this other part, but it mentioned the subsequent studies show that inscriptions and seals in the Delta bearing the names of Hyksos rulers were West Semitic. Okay, and then it says recent archaeological excavations in the Eastern Nile Delta have confirmed that conclusion and indicate that the Hyksos quote-unquote invasion was a gradual process of immigration, blah, blah, blah. And then it says the most important dig, referring to those recent archaeological excavations, has been undertaken by Manfred Bietak of the University of Vienna at Tel Ed Daba, a site in the eastern delta identified as Avaris, the Hyksos capital. Excavations there show a gradual increase of Canaanite influence in the styles of pottery, architecture, and tombs from around 1800 BCE. By the time of the 5th dynasty, some 150 years later, the culture of the site, which eventually became a huge city, was overwhelmingly Canaanite. The Tel Ed Daba finds are evidence for a long and gradual development of Canaanite presence in the Delta and a peaceful takeover of power there.
It'd have to be pretty gradual to start it as earlier than the 5th dynasty, because we're talking really like around the pyramid, just after the Pyramid Age, which
yeah, exactly. They're saying that when they were finding pottery and architecture and tomb styles that were Canaanite styles, they said the 1800 BCE. But then it wasn't full-blown Canaanite stuff until, like you said, 15th dynasty.
Okay, because if it was that early, the connection for another 1,000 years would be really tenuous with any kind of Hebrew peoples as a distinct people.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm open to the possibility that is the kernel behind the Exodus story, but I still don't know enough about all the details to really render a meaningful opinion.
I think it's I think I mentioned Gmerkin's book when Dale was in the Hangout. But, you could take these old stories and work them into a later story, that for whatever reasons you're writing the story. And the connection is only literary, not actually historical.
Right.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying that the Exodus is historical. Is that what you mean?
No, I wasn't suggesting you were.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think people seize upon that though, like you said,
Well,
definitely.
I'm just troubled by, yeah, there is archaeological evidence of Canaanites in Egypt, but, to take that as a linkage is, I think, really following a tenuous thread, I think.
It
So,
is
I'm
tenuous,
concerned.
especially considering the. I mean, it doesn't sound. It sounds like the influx of the Canaanites to that part of the delta was gradual, and the exodus, if you will, from that region seems to have been gradual. Also, they were driven out. Well, I don't know actually. Was it was their exit gradual, or were they driven out like by military force? The Egyptians, I don't remember. Yeah,
Well,
that's where we have to
when
rely
they were
on the.
saying, like, there's no evidence of any kind of exodus, gradual or otherwise, but what there is evidence of is gradual infiltration into Canaan of tribes that were supposedly distinctly Hebrew, so, but not an invasion there. But there was not even a gradual exodus of peoples. There's no evidence or anything you could point to and say, okay, this must have been Hebrews leaving Egypt, because there's just no evidence of that.
Well, how far back would you go before you would make a distinction between Canaanites and Hebrews?
To alien times, because I think
When aliens were building
yeah, I
the
think it's
pyramids that far back?
Theosophy and like Madame Blavatsky or whatever her name was. And, they they thought the Hebrews were some kind of like specifically alien race, or were created specifically by aliens way back in times of Lemuria, before Atlantis even.
Listen to this part here. It says, Manetho describes how the Hyksos invasion of Egypt was finally brought to an end by a virtuous. Is that an echo? Virtuous Egyptian king who attacked and defeated the Hyksos, quote, killing many of them and pursuing the remainder to the frontiers of Syria. In fact, Manetho suggested that after the Hyksos were driven from Egypt, they founded the city of Jerusalem and constructed a temple there. Far more trustworthy is an Egyptian source of the 6th century BCE that recounts the exploits of Pharaoh Ahmose of the 18th dynasty, who sacked Avaris, which was that main city in that region, and chased the remnants of the Hyksos to their main citadel in southern Canaan, Sharuhen, near Gaza, which he stormed after a long siege. And indeed, around the middle of the 16th century BCE, Tel Ed Daba was abandoned, marking the sudden end of Canaanite influence there. So yeah, again, I don't know what, this is just their argument, Finkelstein and Silverman's, but it seems like they're saying that's their position on it. Which I haven't read that other book you're talking about. Maybe they're taking it too far. I don't know.
You could also say that, okay, maybe this distinctive Canaanite influence was a style and influence on indigenous Egyptian peoples. At some point, they just stopped doing it. It's not like there was a people that were there and left, but it could have been just a particular way of life that just was assimilated back into the larger Egyptian culture.
Yeah, I guess it depends on also how much stock you'd put in that Egyptian record, whatever that was when they mentioned from the 6th century BCE. I mean,
Yeah, that too.
it does sound similar to what Manetho reports, at least in respect to them leaving. But it's different too in a couple ways. So who knows? What was that other book you had mentioned that talks about it from the other side? Talks about this Hyksos thing, and whether or not it's related to the
Oh,
Exodus.
the Gurmurkin book.
How do you
I
spell
always
that?
get the get the title mixed up. It's Russell Gurmurkin, Gmirkin. And let me fire it up because I always get Manetho and Berosus or whatever his name is backwards and sideways.
Oh yeah, you showed me this before, I think. Berosus in
Yeah.
Genesis, Manetho
Yeah.
in Exodus. Yeah.
Yeah. And he goes into a lot of other stuff as side points, like he talks about, because what we know about the Hyksos, a lot comes from,
From Manetho.
yeah, probably, yeah, and Josephus. And they're always reliable.
Well, we don't even have Manetho, do we? We just have Josephus talking about what Manetho said, right?
Yeah, we don't have Berosus either. He's like summarized in, I don't know, what is he, CBS or somebody?
Yeah.
So yeah, we don't have
There's
any
zillions of
stuff.
those situations. We don't have any Papias. We don't have. I mean, the list goes on and on.
I haven't seen much Doug Blinkhorn either.
No. All my works would be pseudepigraphical anyway.
Yeah, you don't want them released till after your death, right?
Mm-hmm. That way, my estate can be rich.
That's right. And your descendants don't have to face all that ridicule and ostracism,
Exactly.
at least while you're around.
Yeah, I was going to do a BAR search, see what they had on it, but it'd work much faster if I actually spelled Hiscos right when I'm trying to do the search, huh?
It would indeed.
Yeah, I'm a moron. Huh?
Spelled like Hicks.
Yeah, H-I.
Somebody wake up Hicks.
Them there Hyksos coming into my country, all they're doing is getting their Chevys jacked up on Cinderbox. Let's get them out of here.
I'm sure somebody's made that kind of etymological relationship. Oh, that's where our term comes from.
We need to build a wall.
Oh, I'm sure you can find it somewhere. Just search hard enough.
You should have been in the Interfaith Hangout yesterday with Nephilim. I forget the example, but he was trying to say that some group mentioned in the Bible was related to some other group from history, and he made some really really bad etymological connection. He claimed there was a connection.
Yeah, he needs to stay off those apologist sites, because anytime he comes on to preach his sermons, that's where he gets all of his information from. And I have to sit through it to be nice. And I'm falling asleep because I know where he read it from, and I'm just waiting for him to get done.
Yeah, so that's the proper spelling. Berosus and Genesis, Manetho and Exodus. Hellenistic histories in the date of the Pentateuch. I was listening to that interfaith thing live until like 1 in the morning on my time, which I shouldn't have. I should have been in bed by then. But I missed out on all the action, I guess, that happened after that. It was actually interesting for a change yesterday.
Did you see the tarot card readings?
No, I thought I was hoping to catch that. Who's doing it?
A couple of them. Kevin did 1 or 2 of them, and then some guy I think named Justin, who I hadn't seen before, did a couple also.
Oh, okay.
They got pretty personal on some of them too. It was pretty intense.
Some famous skeptic was talking about how he put himself through college with palm reading. That he at first thought, oh, this is, I must have real talent. Then he thought, well, I'm going to deliberately tell people the opposite of what the palm reading texts are telling me that this stuff means. And it was just as successful. I mean, he was able to actually fund his college by doing that.
Yeah.
No matter what he said.
Yep. I mean, if you just throw out enough vague things that are pretty much universal to the human experience, you're gonna hit your target over and over again.
Yeah, I think Randy, the amazing Randy, what the heck is his name?
Yeah, that's him.
Yeah, he had everybody fill out a questionnaire about something about them personally. It was like, or it wasn't. It was like a statement about them. And it's how many people think it's 100% about them, and a few people raise their hands. A little bit more people raise their hands, somewhat. So everybody found that what it said was applicable to them. And say, okay, now pass yours to the back person, and the person in the back bring yours up to the front, and then tell me if you think that applies to you. And it was exactly the same for everybody.
Why did he spell? Oh, never mind. So Berosus was a Babylonian historian. Did
Yeah,
not
he
know
was the
that.
one that supposedly translated into Greek most of the Mesopotamian myths, and then the book mentions that his version of the myths in Greek are closer to the biblical accounts than the actual cuneiform epics that they discovered, in Mesopotamia, which caused all the sensation a couple hundred years ago.
Huh. Didn't know that either.
Yeah, so when I read this book, I skimmed a lot of it. I went right to, okay, show me the proof that because that's the central thesis of the book, obviously. So, and I wasn't 100% convinced, but I was definitely food for thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, James Randi.
I'll be right back.
I could go right to, well, maybe not. Look up Hyksos in this book and see
Yeah, I'm
where
not
it gets
finding
me.
anything. I'm finding the ones when did Israel begin and all that, but they had. I remember reading one in this archive someplace.
Duh. Spelling. Okay, the next author who wrote of the Jews was Manetho, an Egyptian priest who wrote a history of the Egyptians around 285 BCE during the reign of Ptolemy I Soter, 325 to 282 BCE. Manetho said Jerusalem and Judea were originally settled by the Hyksos, or Shepherd Kings, a dynasty of foreign kings who once held sway over Egypt. Later, in the time of Amenopis and Ramesses, certain polluted Egyptians under the leadership of an apostate Egyptian priest named Osarseph and allied with the Hyksos, were also said to have been expelled into Judea. Manetho referred to a contemporary oral tradition that equated Osarseph with Moses. Despite a superficial resemblance to the Jewish Exodus story, it can be demonstrated that Manetho relied entirely on native Egyptian records and literature. Manetho, like Hecataeus of Abdera, knew of a figure named Moses associated with the Jews, but there is no evidence that Manetho read or knew of the existence of Jewish writings. Interesting. Later on, from Diodorus Siculus Library, some manuscript, blah, blah, blah. The description of the foreigners being driven into Judea returns again to the negative tradition in Manetho. But in Manetho, Judea was not uninhabited at the expulsion of polluted Egyptians and their Hyksos allies to Judea in the time of Danaus. The Hyksos had founded Judea and Jerusalem some 500 years earlier. The description of Judea as, at that time, utterly desolate did not come from Manetho, nor did it reflect a Pentateuchal description. Rather, the description of Jerusalem as uninhabited signals a return to Hecataeus' foundation story. Hellenistic foundation stories often had Greek heroes setting off with their followers in search of some uninhabited locale where they founded a new colony. So he's drawing a lot of parallels between Greek literature and the Pentateuch's storytelling. And apparently being heavily influenced by Greek literature that would have been available in Alexandria during the time of the creation of the Septuagint.
Yeah, this year Out of Egypt, Archaeological Context of the Exodus by James Hoffmeyer in 2007. This is probably pretty old, but he was talking about at the end of this one here. I was just looking at it.
I think I have that one. It's like I just couldn't read too much of it.
Yeah.
What was the name of that one again?
Uh,
Archaeology in the Bible? Was it?
see, it is. Yeah, it's Out of Egypt from Archaeological VAR and January, February 2007. The Archaeological Context of the Exodus by James Hoffmeyer.
Okay, I don't have it. No. But I did, I think, read an excerpt or a long discussion of it somewhere recently.
In sum, the entry of ancient Hebrews into Egypt in search of water during famine and their subsequent enslavement seems authentic. It is certainly unlikely that such a demeaning and ignoble origin could have been later been introverted by biblical authors. If it were fiction, one would expect the product of creative imagination to offer a more glorious picture of their origins. Egyptologists and biblical scholars have been interested in the place names related to the route of Exodus. I don't know. Yeah, you can see here how deep they carved the imagery into the walls. Like when I was there, I mean that's like super deep.
Yeah, it seems like photographs probably just don't do it justice, huh?
Yeah. Well, this isn't a bad article, I guess. But yeah, I read so much material on that. None of it, like, I didn't think none of it was very good because everybody's trying to like have some kind of marker on when this whole thing would have happened and all that. And they're all doing a bad job of it, I think.
Yeah, I got to reread Chapter 7, Manetho and the Hyksos. That sounds like deals with nothing else but that subject.
Yeah.
I can export this and throw it up to the Bible Geek listeners group. Just don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
When was that book published that's on your screen?
Me?
Yeah.
2006.
Okay.
So it's so last decade, man. And it's by a reputable TNT Clark International.
So it's actually it was published after the Bible on Earth, so I wonder if he goes into addressing what Finkelstein and Silverman were talking about as far as the archaeological evidence.
Let's see if his name comes up. Yeah, it does. Well,
Yeah,
So
this
that's
is awesome. Yeah, I went to this Temple of Habu, and BAR, Israelites found in Egypt, September, October 2003, BAR. I don't know, but, like, this is a pretty old one, so, but I mean, there was imagery on these walls, and I think the stele from that mentions the Hebrews when they were bragging about conquering. I got to see that in the Cairo Museum, but all the imagery of their battles and everything is all under these walls. Yeah, I seen this right here. So there was here's Ramses splitting the heads.
of Israelites.
I don't see who these were. I destroyed the people of Seir among the Minoan tribes. I razed their tents, their people, their property, and their cattle as well, without number, and carried them away in captivity. As a tribute of Egypt, I gave them to the Enid of the gods as slaves for their houses. So back in 2003, they took that as Pharaoh talking about the Minoans as Israelis, but it didn't say that specifically, specifically. Now, in the temple of Ramses, the one that they moved, they cut it in sections of blocks because when they built the Aswan Dam, they had to move it. But inside there is a picture of Horus on one side, which is the, like the sun deity or whatever under Ra or whoever it was, Horus. And on the other side was Seth, which would be the kind of like the Christian Satan, or the kind of like he was like the evil uncle in Egyptian mythology, and both were blessing King Ramses, saying, both evil and good bless me, how bad can it be? And it showed him splitting the heads of the I believe it was the Assyrians and the Libyans. It wouldn't be called that then, but it was crazy to see it. And they had a temple of Horus. I actually got to see the Holy of Holies of Horus, and also the Holy of Holies of so the island of Philae. The Holy of Holies of the Egyptian goddess, Horus's mother. Forgot her name. It wasn't Hathor. That was another
you mean ISIS?
god. Yes, Temple of Isis. Gorgeous. So when you go into these temples, there would be imagery all over the ceiling that was blackened by the monks who would burn smoke to cover up the imagery. And I got a picture of a cross chiseled into the altar of Isis to turn it into a Christian kind of sanctuary. And even in the Temple of Esna, there's this huge, it was built during the Roman era, a huge zodiac on the ceiling that was smoked out. And there was a carving of the the clay god forming man out of clay, and there was like imagery chipped out. So what they used to do, and this is what I think happened a lot of times, like when these rogue kings would go monotheistic, or there was a form of government that wasn't pleasing, your name would be removed from every piece. And what they did to the you could see it right on the walls. They would chip out your imagery. They would chip out your cartouche on the walls, and some of it was like completely flattened and destroyed. Hatshepsut, who was queen, they had blocks put around her obelisk, so the deities wouldn't be able to see it. They didn't dare to knock it down because it would be sacrilegious, but they just built a stone like covering over the top. And so like having your name in the wall or having your name written was huge, back then, because when Ra would come up or the sun would come up, they would see your name and they would remember you. It was amazing. Yeah, when I came back, I got translations of some of these texts, and actually the I think it was University of Chicago, took the translation from the Temple of Horus and actually made it into a play, which was pretty amazing.
How long were you in Egypt? Oh, he must have stepped away.
Maybe he had the scroll of Thoth itself, by which Isis raised Osiris from the dead.
There's a really good Wikipedia article that goes into a lot more detail on the Hyksos. A lot more detail than the book.
Did you donate?
I did, actually.
Cool.
Yeah, sorry about that. I wanted to get the album. Since we're on the topic, I'll try to keep it relevant. If I can get to that temple.
Well, there you go. Reuven has spoken.
Now, the Saqqara complex was pretty amazing because you can see. I wish I could switch this. I can't switch it. You can see here you have Greek-style columns being started, and this is old. Like, this is older. So what they used to do is, so here's your wall, and they start the columns. So these weren't freestanding yet, these columns. And here's a door hinge to the gods. It wasn't a real door, but here's early hinges in the temple. And here you can see it too. How these columns started in Egypt. Alright. Let me get to the Temple of Habu and the Pharaoh.
Next time do slides, Wayman.
Yeah, I know. Slides would have been better. I just want to show where he was bragging about feeding the sea peoples and how the stones were taken down for sugarcane. I think I'm there right now. Yeah, there were certain sections of this. Yeah, here's Ramses on his war chariot. And you can see how some of that's chipped out. Some of these temples had hidden doorways in them, built right into the walls. So when the priest would go in and ask a question of the gods, they would get an answer. It's kind of a shady thing to do. Here's images of people training for war. Here's two guys wrestling here. And
Right.
I wish I had the Ark of Horus here somewhere. I knew I had the Philistines fighting. Here's Temple S now. Here's the imagery of the creation of the god of clay, creating man out of clay.
Wayman, when you there, you went with a group of people? Did you have like armed guards and escorts and that kind of stuff?
Yes. AK-47s on the bus. It was nasty.
Oh.
Metal detectors, but that was before everything went crazy. We were like, why are they there? And we were happy they were there, but at the same time, it was kind of strange.
Because occasionally, even with all that security, you know, tourists do get machine gun now and then.
Yep. It was 3 years earlier. There was a shooting at the Sphinx, and so they needed all that. And tourist police were at all the sites. They had AK-47s, everything. So here's the. I had a picture of the Ark and the priests, and I even had one of the priests carrying the Ark on the walls there somewhere. This is very disorganized, but I didn't know I'd be doing this. So here's that image that I was saying, of both good and bad bless me. That's Ramses and Seth and Horus on this side. I'm probably putting everybody to sleep, but someday I'll get all this organized and I'll bring it in a more relevant topic. So sorry I got off on a tangent there.
That was just the rapid movement of the camera was hard to take, but some of those pictures are really amazing, though.
Yeah, I think I didn't know anything about it when I went, but I knew it was important, so I shot like 26 film with a 35 millimeter with the shutter full open. Like the sun was so hot there and so bright. I had like I had the shutter. Nah, it wasn't full open. That'd be a night shot. I'm a moron. Very quick. Like I had it on 1,000, and I had 800 speed film.
How long were you there for?
We went on a 10-day trip to all the temples,
That's awesome.
and
Did you go? You went to the pyramids, right?
yep.
That's so cool. Wish I could go.
Um,
Not going right now, that's for sure.
no, it's pretty sad. Oh, Abu Simbel. That's the temple that they moved. And come back on here real quick. I don't think everybody's sick, but um, here he's splitting the heads of the Syrians and the Assyrians. And I don't know if you guys can see that. They used to cut off their hands and ears with a pile of hands. The right hands, they can't hold a sword.
Free book?
Let's see here. So here's the priest taking the Ark of Horus.
Jim, did you know your mic was hot?
Usually I don't mind Christmas music for a long period of time before Christmas, but I'm getting already kind of worn out on it.
I haven't even heard any yet. I love Christmas music.
Well, I've got teenagers, and my kids are like practicing on their saxophones and their oboes and stuff. And
Oh
when my
yeah.
wife was here, she was listening to endless iPod Christmas music, and I don't know. Eventually, it just got to me.
Yeah, I still got to put my tree up.
Yeah, and a lot of people in the neighborhood have got their lights all going and stuff. So, but I haven't done anything yet. Last year I had a real tree, so I don't know what I'm going to do this year. I'd have to get a new fake one if I did. So I'm going to do some shopping around, see who's got some cheap trees.
Yeah, we cut one down last year at a tree park, tree farm.
I need to see one of those pre-decorated trees, or you just like open up like an umbrella. It's got all the lights and stuff already. You don't have to do any kind of trimming at all.
Yeah.
Now that's modern technology, man. That's what I love.
Yeah, we got some old ornaments, and then some ornaments that we got when when we were first, me and my wife were first together, living in an apartment out of college. So we still hang some Dollar General ornaments on there. Oh, that year was a poor man's year. We got everything from Dollar General. Like, we scrounged up in, like, we were saving all of our, like, pennies and everything just to buy Christmas decorations.
I got all that stuff that my kids made in grade school and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we were thinking of calling it quits for the evening, and I think everybody's more or less agreed, right?
Yeah.
Fine with me.
All right. Take care.
Well, thanks for stopping by, everybody, and you're welcome to hang out after we go off the air. But I'm definitely gonna hit the hay.
Nighty night.